So I'd like to invite a senior lecturer of psychiatry, Dr. Chatturi Suravira, to address the psychological effects of COVID-19 on different people of society. The platform is yours, madam.
Thank you, and good evening to every one of you. Can you all hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
madam.
madam.
Right. So when it comes to COVID-19, we know that it's a viral infection, and usually in a disorder, there is a psychiatric aspect of it, because there are so many psychological issues which are coming up. Because let's say it's a diabetes, you have some psychological issues, like they might be depressed and they might not comply with the medications, they are distressed. Let's say cancer, then it gives rise to a separate set of psychological issues. But usually when it takes coughs and colds and influenzas, they usually don't leave much of a psychological impact. But why did COVID-19 cause a huge impact on the lives, mental health of the people in the world, not only in Sri Lanka? That was because there were so many issues which were coming up, and also people did not really they have not experienced something like this before. And not only the people who were affected by COVID-19, but the rest of the world, the people who heard of it and the people who got to know about it, even the kids started to feel the stress and the impact of it, not directly through the disorder COVID-19, but through other mechanisms as well. So when we talk of the COVID-19, the impact was vast. It's not merely a physical illness. Yes, while being physical illness, there were so many aspects where people suffered from. Now, let's say if we take the social aspects of it, there was a lockdown, there was a curfew, people could not go out for several days. The basic necessities were there were issues in obtaining basic necessities like food. How do they get the food? And there were people stuck in different localities, not being able to come home. It might be like might be from another country, but it happened in Sri Lanka from one location to another location, like between districts. And then the schools were closed, and there was social distancing which was imposed. So people lost social interactions with other people. While certain people lost social interactions, people who were not there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, started living together, which led to another set of problems. Like there were relationship issues which were coming up, and people did not know how to fill in the time left in their hands because they are now confined to home. They did not know how to use that effectively. And then the kids were there, a lot of noise. Now, the people who have been used to a routine where they could wake up in the morning, send the kids to school, and then go to the work, come back again, have limited time to kids and the other family members, and they go to sleep. That was sort of turned upside down, and people could not handle that. That's why relationship issues, not really saying that domestic violence is acceptable or that uh, it should be there, but then certain issues, because even the partners did not know how to live so much of hours together. So there were, keep aside the domestic violence, there were relationship difficulties which were coming out. And then the financial issues. Yes, later on there were mechanisms which were placed to obtain the food and the essential stuff, the medicines and so on. But where do they get the money to buy those? And then some people, they did not get their salaries, so the financial burden that came in. And to another set of people, like the frontline workers, where the health sector, the police, the MOHs, the public health midwives, and the armed personnel, they were forced to work despite all this. So they started facing a different set of problems. And because of all these, the impact was huge to the mental health of people. Apart from all of the factors that I mentioned there, social distancing was introduced because we know that it can lead to contraction of COVID-19. But then, because we did not know about the illness, because we did not know, we did not have a clear idea as to what was going on, and there were conflicting evidence which was coming up, we being human beings, we developed suspiciousness. And there was a stage where people refused to come to work because they were scared and they were stressed, they were anxious because they were fearing contracting the illness. And then people went to the extent of marginalizing healthcare workers and then other frontline workers and people who might have had contact with the family of a suspected or confirmed patient with COVID-19. And there were incidents which were reported there. And then at the same time, there were so many news which was like circulating from the news and social media, and that were really ambiguous, and also different messages were given, which created a lot of anxiety, uncertainty among the general public, which contributed to the psychological issues of the general public. At instances, there were times where the people were suspicious of the next door neighbor as a result. So those were the issues that really came up with with the COVID-19 when we are speaking about the psychological aspects of it. So the impact on the mental well-being was, as I said earlier, because they feared and they worried about their own health. Will I get this issue? And then fear and worry about the health of your loved ones. Like, sometimes they said, I'm okay, but then I don't want my elderly mother to get this, or my partner who is having diabetes and hypertension. So they feared the health of the loved ones. And like, people who were working, sometimes they send their elderly parents and their kids to faraway places, which again introduce certain issues like, because of physical distancing, the kids are separated from the parents, all these things. And then there was a huge amount of uncertainty whether to use the face mask, whether not to use the face mask. And depending on how strong the message that was given in the social media, people tended to pick up those messages and argue as to what the best thing is. And then there was this issue about social isolation, which was introduced by social distancing as opposed to social integration, because you're losing relationships. There were many, like, we at the psychiatry units, we saw patients, they were not able to meet their loved ones, so they were having depressive symptoms and they were really worried as to what's being happening. So there were issues there. And I have already spoken about financial and the social issues, and the stigma and the discrimination, which I showed in the earlier slide, contributed a lot. Like, there were, although we believe that as a country, that we are like, really hospitable people and we take care of each other, then the fear component, the anxiety component created the stigma and the discrimination. Because ultimately, what we think of is ourselves and our family, and we want to protect ourselves. So because of that, people went to extremes, and that created stigma, discrimination. So what were the social, common psychological reactions that we saw during COVID-19? I mean, I have taken globally what they expected, but more or less in Sri Lanka also, this is what we experienced. Anxiety is what we define as the psychological response to threat. So there was this threat. It was sometimes COVID related, but sometimes it was due to financial issues. Then sometimes it was due to the distancing, and they were restricted. So anxiety was there because of COVID-19 as well as other factors. And sometimes there were anxieties not because of COVID-19, but how do I get my medications during the lockdown? How do I treat my elderly mother who is have diabetes? So there was a lot of issues regarding anxiety. And then depression, because that's what you get when you are helpless, when you don't know what to do, you're feeling sad. So depressive symptoms we saw commonly. And then aches and pains, like which were not really explainable by any other systemic illness. Like there is back pain, but there is no physical cause for it. There is headache, but there is no physical cause for it. And respiratory symptoms were commonly seen. People were so scared, and the anxiety symptoms came out as in respiratory symptoms. Like some people complained of sore throat, and some people were routinely getting themselves checked whether this is COVID-19. And so the respiratory symptoms we saw commonly coming up as an anxiety symptom. And then feeling socially isolated, feeling guilty that I have to, particularly people who went to work, that I have to go to work and I might contract the disease and give it to somebody else. And also there was a significant level of distress as to they did not know what to do. Some people felt trapped because some people are so outgoing and they can't really be inside a place. So that was an issue. So their normal routine of going out, let's say jogging, all these were disrupted. And because of disruption of the routines, there were changes in the sleep, the eating patterns, and working from home also introduced so many psychological issues, because mainly people were online and they gradually got kind of addicted or hooked up on the screens. And you can't go out, when you can't do any outdoor things, they start resorting to their screens, which can be the laptop or the TV or the phone. So there were issues coming up there. And people's sleep-wake cycles were changing, because sometimes because they have nothing to do, they sleep during the daytime and they stay up in the during the nighttime. And eating patterns were changed, concentrating issues, worsening of chronic health problems, worsening particularly mental health conditions, because you might know that any psychiatric illness can be precipitated by stress, distress, or a stressor. So that happened. And then people started resorting for alcohol or psychoactive substances, here particularly alcohol and opiates, heroin, which was going on. That came up as a problem. And then as I mentioned earlier, fear and worry about your own health and the health of the loved ones were seen. Some in extreme levels, because they didn't see an end to it and they did not know what to do. Suicidal thoughts, thoughts of deliberate self-harm were also seen. So when speaking about the mental status or the psychological impact, I would sort of like to categorize it like this. There were the patients, the COVID-19 positive patients, PCR positive patients, as well as the ones who were symptomatic. So I have classified under patients, and the general public who had no COVID-19 positivity or did not have any contacts with them. So the general public. And the frontline workers, the forces, the healthcare workers, another category, and the people who were in the quarantine facilities. So those four groups, although roughly the anxiety symptoms, depressive symptoms, which I mentioned earlier, were seen, they had different sets of problems. So here, because of the audience, I'm going to talk about the issues which were related to general public. The normal people, what do they have to do? So there was always this issue of that anybody can be affected, because it's not something like a cancer, it's not something like which is HIV, AIDS, or tuberculosis. This was just can be affected from a person to another person. Then the older people, but older people were more prone, we knew that. And people with chronic diseases and they were at higher risk of severe illness. So they were mainly affected. And children and teens, they also were affected because of this. So the psychological issues were basically they can be seen in anybody, but older people, people with comorbidities, children and teens were affected more, apart from, let's say, frontline workers and the people who were in quarantine facilities. So what can we do? What can the general public do in this context? If it comes back again, what do we do? Now we know what were the problems that we faced during the lockdown, and we knew some of the things were some of the things we managed to overcome, but some of the things you might not have really thought of as to what to do if it comes again. First thing is, it is all right to feel anxious, because this is a whole new thing. So it is all right to feel anxious. You don't have to worry about getting anxious. When you are worried, you might feel a racing heart, you might breathe heavily, you might sweat a little, you might feel the butterflies in the tummy. So that's anxiety. And at the face of fear, threat, it's all right to get anxious. That you need to know first. So you can talk to others and you can feel better by it. So despite the social distancing, maintaining your relationships with others is very, very important. And you have to be informed. People are giving contradictory messages, so you have to pick and choose as to which source that you are going to believe in. In Sri Lanka, there was the Health Promotion Bureau, the World Health Organization was there, and so you have to stick to reliable sources, and also have some belief and faith in the people who are responsible in taking care of us. I know that when the government or the responsible sources are giving information, you hear another little bird telling you, no, it's not what is happening. It's like this. Make a mehema velalu. So that's what you hear. And then we tend to get carried away so much by those little talks rather than listening to the facts. So if facts are given, you will have to believe in that rather than getting disrupted by what people say as gossip or by social media. Because sometimes you might have realized that those small talks becomes worthless and they were not proven to be true. So there were plenty of resources available in Sri Lanka at the time. Like there were speeches given by respectable persons, like, you know, they knew what they were talking about, and so you have to believe in that. Also, when obtaining information, you can't be doing it at all times, because repeated stressful information is not good to the mental health. So you have to or you have to be informed, but restrict it just once a day or twice a day. I mean, there's no point in getting all the information, like, you know, that there was one detected in Kandy and another two detected in one. So all that information is not necessary. I mean, partly the media is responsible for this, because they showed everything without filtering, like from funerals as to how it was cremated, which was not necessary. So there has to be some sort of a mechanism to control that, which ultimately came out. But then we also have to pick and choose. I mean, we don't watch everything on TV, we pick and choose. But when it comes to COVID-19, people tend to, like, you know, switch channels and go from that social media to this, which only increase their anxiety. And activity scheduling. I know most of the patients, I mean, most of the people who were distressed came and told us, when once the work routine was taken out, they did not have anything to do. So there's something that we need to look about, we have to rethink about. We have to include other things in life to our routines. It's not only work, money, coming home, that studying. We have to have, this just shows how unbalanced our lives are, which is going to reduce our coping skills. So to increase the coping skills, you have to have some pleasurable activities, things that we can fall back to. So in the case that something like this happens. Sleep hygiene. We have to have we have to have schedules for sleeping, because the body has a sleep wake cycle. Go to bed at a particular time, wake up at a particular time. And you can't be using phones, laptops while in the bed, because the brain starts associating the bed with the laptop and reading rather than sleeping. So then we have to do another set of therapies to uncouple that. And using caffeinated drinks late in the night and using alcohol, all that contributes to bad sleep hygiene. So improve sleep hygiene was a very important thing. Limiting screen time. A lot of people got addicted to screens. And also, because of the online work from home strategies, there were good aspects, but the bad aspects were meetings were scheduled at all times, and you were given tasks to do and to meet deadlines, which meant, unlike in the workplace where you do a 9 to 4 job, you were working throughout. A lot of people were complaining that when it was a normal setting, we found it easy because we finished work at 4. But during the online working time, they had to work excessively for some people, while some did not have many work. So that was an issue. And some people, they can't work from home, particularly females with children running around. You have to attend to that. So that schedule was lost. That schedule, you can have a separate room, just like in the workplace, so that during these limited hours, you work separately from the others, which is what you can do. And also, if meetings are scheduled at all odd times, you can be assertive, which Sri Lankans lack. Like, without hurting the other's feelings, you should be able to tell, no, this is at 8 o'clock, which I cannot do. And so you have to be able to objectively give evidence and explain yourself so that your rights are spared while not hurting the others. These occasions, a lot of people got into trouble because they were not assertive. And well-balanced meals, avoid alcohol and drugs, which a lot of you know it's not going to be good, because when there is a vacuum in your schedule and you fill it by alcohol or drugs, then it's going to get into the routine when all the other avenues are closed. So you end up getting dependent. And trying to do other activities, planting, and like then drawing, some things that you used to do earlier, connect with others. Then this was a very good time to rethink and reflect. How much time are we spending with our kids, the parents, the family? Some people did not even know how to live 24 hours with their partners, which created problems. It might not be very common, but then there were incidents like that. And then how to reintegrate. And when those things are happening, what else do we have? Are they required to be studying all the time? The mothers became teachers, and then the children were forced to study 24/7. The mothers and the teachers at home did not know how to teach, so there were role reversals. So you have to sort of give consideration that children, on a typical schooling day, it's only 6 hours, but we can't make them study all the time just because it's a lockdown. So those are the things that we have to rethink and reflect, which most of us did not do. And just an important part, a lot of people were thinking about the adults, the frontline workers, but how will the children and adolescents react? They are confined and they have such a lot of energy that they want to use, and they're not allowed to go out. Some people, because of all the uncertainty and the news that was going around, they didn't even let them get out of the house to the garden. So excessive crying, irritability, returned into behavior that they have outgrown, like, they might end up bedwetting, and they might, like, suddenly faint, excessive worry, sadness, and they might start worrying about their parents who are going out of the house. They might worry if their parents are smokers, using alcohol, because they also get fed with all this news and information, and sometimes might not be fully, and sometimes even though they get it fully, they might not understand it properly, and they might get irritable and act out, they getting aggressive, and because they are like, stuck to this boring routine. Apart from that, the parents asking them to study because මේ වගේ වෙලාවකයි කොයි වෙල කාලෙවත් එන්නේ නැහැ කින්ද පාඩම් කරන්නකො ළමයෝ. So those are the kind of attitudes that we saw. So poor school performance, they might actually end up not going to school, and online classes were started, which was another issue because online accessibility was not there throughout in the island. So they were having difficulties picking up lessons. Another set of issues arose. And also some were getting bored in front of the laptop. They resorted to other things like watching YouTube. So all these issues were seen. And unexplained headaches, body pains, various things, earaches, all these things were there. And also some kids resorted to alcohol, tobacco, heroin, things like that. So this is how children would face this kind of stressors. So most of the time we tend to ignore when children say things like that. So best thing is, if you are worried, if there is a change in your partner or your parent or children also, if you are not sure, you have to seek help before it gets worse. So with regards to kids, you have to talk, explain, and about the COVID-19 outbreak. Again, I'm re-emphasizing from credible sources. And then we tend not to answer useful to you. They would be coming and probing. Ami, what is saying there? What are they talking about? No, you're not really, because just because you're hesitant or just because you don't know the answer, don't leave them in a dark space. Answer questions, and also in a way that they can understand, because just like us, they also feel uncertainty. They also feel anxiety. And apart from that, there's this overprotective behaviors, which is going to confine them to a shell. So you have to reassure your child that they are safe and let them know it's okay to feel anxious, just like I told earlier. So all the things that we are experiencing, they also experience. They are not immune to them. So we have to reflect and understand that. And you have to limit your family's exposure to news coverage, just as I spoke earlier. They don't have to be exposed to all the news, but you have to give in small chunks appropriately in a limited manner. And keeping routines for them also is very important, but the routine should not consist of studying maths, studying Sinhala, studying science throughout the day. They have to have something else, other things as well. And it's no use if we are always on the phone or in the laptop asking the kids not to do that. If we find it difficult to find alternative activities to do because the books are in the phone, the TV is on the phone, the radio is on the phone, the kids are also, they are going to find it difficult as well. So you have to create things like, if I choose to substitute my reading, and I have run out of books, by like planting fruits or vegetables, then just like that, you have to give an alternative solution to the kids. You can't just say, don't use the phone, don't use the laptop. And then we have to be role models in the sense that they also follow the general things. Like I saw a lot of people carrying their kids to the supermarket. You don't have to take the kid there because, like, they have to understand, while that we have to stick to routines and stick to routines and adapt, they have to understand that unnecessary outings are also not good. So restrictions should also be there. And you have to explain why that is done, rather than giving into what their requests are, like taking to the food city or taking to supermarkets. And with the exception of the little ones, the adolescents, the older kids, they also should be given the face mask. They also should follow the same mechanisms, wash their hands, no exceptions. So those things should be inculcated in them. So the people who are coming out of quarantine facilities, that's going to be an issue, because they are also a part of general public. They've been there. They might not have COVID-19, but still they were quarantined. So they might have mixed emotions, like, they might feel sad, angry, guilty, and fear and worry, because people tend to focus on the minute details, like, after 3 weeks of quarantine, we know that most of the people are safe. But then if we hear about one exception, we tend to focus on that rather than the rest of the normal thing. So those are the issues that might come up in them as well. And stress from the experience of monitoring yourselves and being monitored by the others, guilt about not being able to contribute to the family, the work, and they also can end up in depressed, anxious states. Same applies to the kids. So basically, it is the same that you would see, but you might see it in an exaggerated manner from the people who are coming out of the quarantine facilities. Just I thought of discussing about this, because this appears to appears to come up a lot uh, after this lockdown or the curfew. Excessive screen time. Whatever the device that they have, it could be a phone or the laptop, people have started getting used to it. So it has replaced the healthy behaviors, and it has an impact on physical activity, sleep, and it can give rise to physical issues like neck pains and sleep daylight night reversals, and can end up in internet addiction disorder or gaming disorders, because they are involved in the games for a long periods of time. And then some end up, like, gambling at the extreme limits, and that takes off your ability to concentrate, complete school tasks, and also it affects negatively on the relationships. The answering of questions to a question that is asked by a relative is also done looking at the phone or the screen, and you neglect your self hygienes, and when it's taken away, it might lead to mood changes, and they might actually have a control outburst, inability to control outburst when asked to stop. So because of the excessive screen time or gaming, there was a separate set of issues which came out of because of COVID-19. So just little advice for parents and the guardians. So online, offline activities should be balanced, and you need to keep strict control, like of what the children are doing, and you have to communicate the boundaries and rules clearly with the children, and parental control should be there at all times. Never think that your child is not going to get into a bad habit, because they are children, they are being adolescents, they are impulsive, they like novelty seeking. So that is the nature of the human beings, particularly the little ones. So you can't do like that. So you have to be monitoring, you have to be aware as to what's going on. So you have to remind the children, take them out of it, because if they don't have control, at least you have to have control, and you have to be aware as to what they are doing, how their sleep is, have they eaten, are they actually attending online lessons, or are they doing other things. So those are the things as parents and guardians that you have to think of regarding gaming. This is not only applicable to children and adolescents, also to adults, but with the exception of monitoring by another adult. You have to be able to monitor yourselves. Psychoactive substances. I mean, psychoactive substance misuse, dependence, all are, we as psychiatrists look at it as medical problems, because there are disease entities there. Alcohol dependence, opiate dependence. Apart from all of that, alcohol do not reduce fear. It does not reduce anxiety. You think that it does, but it actually increases anxiety. It'll make you fall asleep now, but after a while, your sleep will be lost. So all those benefits that you think are there with alcohol are not there. Not only that, it will precipitate many other medical illnesses, and also COVID-19 resistance is low with smoking, alcohol, and also it contributes to the contraction of illnesses because sharing of cigarettes and so on. So psychoactive substances by any means on the long run is not a good coping strategy. It only complicates things. You might feel my sleep is okay with this. No, only for a short time. It's going to cause problems in the long run. When do you know? Now, the things that I mentioned earlier are just normal psychological reactions that will occur, but it will go away. I mean, all of you, including myself, felt all these anxieties, but it has gone away. It is less now. But if the ones that I mentioned earlier are persisting and you're not able to get on with your normal routine, and if you're not able to get into a new routine and function in that, and if it is persistent, that means you need help. Apart from that, if you're feeling sad, has no energy, has no pleasure in things, you're always negative about life, including feeling worthless and not being able to sleep, take meals, that's depression. If you're always fearful and the fearfulness has not subsided by now, and always having racing heart and sweating, feeling of butterflies, poor sleep, that's anxiety, which needs help. If the aches and pains are persisting, if the poor sleep is persisting, that indicate that there is an underlying psychological issue which might need management. So you have to seek help. If the COVID-19 like symptoms are persisting and you're constantly worrying, checking up in the internet about the illness and so on, you have to seek help. Are you overdoing the hand washing? Are you always washing the hands? Just once hand washing is not enough. You're repeatedly washing the hands. And there are repetitive thoughts, images, and repetitive actions that you do. Like you feel that your hands are dirty and you go on to wash it. Thoughts of ending life, self-harm, all these things, see, you need to seek help. Just like you might not be having a psychological disorder, but just seek help because you're suffering and your functionality interactions are affected. So just some resources. WHO website provides very good information. Health Promotion Bureau, and there are support mechanisms placed by the Sri Lanka College of Psychiatrists. The psychologists are available. There are qualified counselors that you can go to, mind you, qualified counselors, and 1926 hotline is there, and the other hotline which I have put down last is actually for frontline workers, but we got quite a lot of calls from general public as well. And also there are mental psychiatry units all over the country, so you can always go them, and there is a private sector psychiatrists, psychologists, counselors as well. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much, madam. That was very informative and useful, because normally in Asian countries like Sri Lanka, the psychological aspect of things is mostly overlooked. So thank you for shedding light on a topic that most people choose to ignore these days. And thank you very much for being here with us today. We are very grateful. So today, most of you who are here are either Rotaractors or other club members. And as you all know, we are still planning on doing various projects even during the pandemic in order to make people's lives better as much as possible. But it's no secret that we have to face a lot of problems in doing so, given the current circumstances in the country. So now I would like to call upon Dr. Manuja Pereira, a senior lecturer from the Department of Public Health, University of Kelaniya, to address a few problems that we'll have to face and how to overcome those issues. Madam.
Thank you, Sanduni. Yes. So I have, very few slides, brief slides. I would first share them, and then we'll discuss what the issues and challenges you would like to discuss with me.
Yes.
Yeah. So I hope you can see my screen. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So the topic given to me was COVID-19, how can youth respond? So I think like being youth, being the productive, young, energetic, enthusiastic, and innovative, the generation, the youth. Um, Youth are important in two aspects in this pandemic response. Firstly, by being themselves, by trying to get involved with doing new things and responding energetically and enthusiastically, and by being the generation that could carry the experience and learned knowledge, the awareness you gain during this pandemic. Because as you may have noted, these pandemics are not that common. And that's the big deal when you get a big pandemic that obstructs all the day-to-day things at local, national, and international levels. It's new to many of us. So maybe when youth get involved in these responses from early stage of their lives, when the other pandemic happens, you will be around. And you will be using the experience you have gained during this one. So, I mean, in a nutshell, in a pandemic situation or in any other situation, your health, when it faces an external threat, your health is protected by two main things. If it's a communicable disease, your immunity and your habits. As you see in this pandemic, what protects you is how you wash your hands, how you keep your distance, how you wear a face mask. It does not only protect you, it also protects others by you not being the agent that transmits the germ or the virus to someone else. And of course, your environment matters. For example, in an environment like this, where the society think that wearing a mask is limiting their freedom. I mean, majority of developed countries, USA, UK, Brazil, many countries face this issue, where the public resisted the public health advice and measures. And this type of social environments also matter as much as the physical environment. I hope you know the idea of this concept of the social environment, because I mean, like in physical environments, you are talking about providing hand washing facilities, you are talking about providing masks, you are talking about providing work settings that allow you to work from home, etc., etc. But the social environment where it motivates people to comply to those things also matter. So what can you do? The most important thing the youth can do is to be healthy and help people to be healthier. For example, if we take the simplest example of Sri Lanka and Corona, when so many of us, the people, got Corona, only few died. Why? Because it was, I mean, the infected people were healthy young people. For example, the Navy cluster, which is about 2/3 of our patient load, healthy young males, and majority of them were asymptomatic. So being healthier helps you by improving your immunity and improving your resistance to infection, and you also helps the community by not being a spreading agent. For example, because your immunity is high and your virus load is defeated, so the transmissibility is low. So you are helping yourself and the community by being healthier and more resilient towards infections. So how can we improve our health? By improving our habits and by improving environments. So when we talk about improving habits, it's about encouraging protective habits like hand washing. And it is also about discouraging harmful habits like tobacco use, alcohol use, unnecessary gatherings. When we are talking about improving environments, it's about promoting safer environments where people are safe because all the others are wearing masks. It's also about promoting supportive environments where people have facilities to comply with the public health advice and maintain their good habits. So I am pretty sure when you are talking about innovations, initiations and actions, you may have thought about these protective habits about hand washing, personal hygiene, respiratory etiquette, and of course the nutrition matters. So well-balanced meals matters. And you may have not thought about this other aspect about discouraging harmful habits. So I do invite you to think about them and incorporate them in your intervention. And I also urge you to think about the environments. And when you think about the environments, not only about the physical environment, but also about the social environment. When you provide hand washing facilities to a school, to a bus stand, you are improving the physical environment and you are making that environment supportive. However, it should be coupled with improving social environment aspects too. It should be coupled with motivating, encouraging people to adhere to these guidelines and to adjust to these new normal behaviors so that the societies, the social networks, the community networks support each other to comply to those. So that's about it, the basics. So I would like to discuss with you about the interventions you have planned, and if you have any questions, I would like to answer. So thank you.
Yes,
I
if
will
you have
stop
any
sharing now. So yeah, okay.
Yes. If you have any questions for Dr. Manuja Perera, you can unmute your microphones and ask, or you can type in the chat box.
They may be all tired with this long session, so yeah. I'm all right with if you want to like discuss in emails in a later date or anything. Yeah.
We'll let them know, madam.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Manuja Perera. I'm sure the knowledge you shared will be used practically by everyone here. We are very grateful for your time and the knowledge you imparted on us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
For everybody listening now, there's a feedback form in the chat box that will take less than 5 minutes to complete. So if you could spare that time and complete it, it will be much appreciated. This will help us in improving the future sessions so that they will be more helpful to you. Okay then, I think it is now time for us to wind things up. Here to deliver the vote of thanks is Rotaract Maheshi Bandara, who is the chairperson of this project, Break the Outbreak. Over to you, Maheshi.
All right, thank you, Sanidhi. So I'll get the vote of thanks very short because the time has picked up. We got a little late. Anyway, I would like to thank, first of all, the panel of speakers today we had. So the Professor Manoj Veerasinghe, Dr. Anand Vijayavikrama, Dr. Ishara Prematilaka, and Dr. Chathuri Suravira and Dr. Manuja Perera, sacrificing their valuable time for this session especially at a time like this. So, dear Madam, sir, we are extremely grateful to you. And I would also like to thank the Stop the Spread Rotaract District Initiative Project committee members and the Assistant Director, Assistant District Rotaract Representative Rotaract Ahmed Hussain, and other district committee members for their immense support in organizing this session. And we were able to reach more than 50 Rotaract clubs within our district. So we are much grateful towards all the presidents of other Rotaract clubs, Interact clubs, Rio clubs, and other university-based clubs who supported us in every possible way. And especially, I would like to thank the Dean of the Faculty of Medicine, University of Colombo, Professor Vajra Disanayake, and our Senior Treasurer of our club, Dr. Lalindra Gunaratna, for providing us with the Zoom facilities. It was really helpful for us to have a data-free Zoom session. And I would like to thank Dr. Inoba Korea, the lecturer from the Department of Microbiology of our faculty, for the advices given throughout this project. Madam, thank you so much. And of course, this session wouldn't have been a success if not for all of you who joined in today. So I'd like to thank each and every one of you on behalf of the Rotaract Club of Faculty of Medicine, University of Colombo, and hope to see you all in our future phases in the Break the Outbreak of our project. So thank you very much again. I hope you will get some knowledge to make use in your own projects of COVID-19. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Maheshi. And I would like to add that this session has been recorded. And if anyone missed this session, they can contact us so that we can provide them with the recording. So thank you again and have a good night.